Hello dear students, welcome to Glecta. So in this video, I'm gonna teach you your English language characterization and narrative voice. Characterization and narrative voice. Narrative voice, it's related to the narrator, means in which the narrator is speaking, he's narrating about the stories to the readers of the text. So now, characterization and narrative voice. First of all, we have to understand what is characterization and narrative voice. Characterization is the way writers create characters and make them believable. Yes, this is important, means the writer is, responsible to create an impact regarding to the characters in the mind of readers. Suppose if we do talk about Pep, or if we talk about Inspector Call, if we do talk about Inspector Call, so Inspector Ghoul is the one, we are very clear about his character, or we are very clear about Edna, or we are very clear about Daisy Denton, Eva Smith. So, the writer is completely responsible for the, for the belief of character in the mind of readers. So, when writing about texts, it's easy to treat characters as real people. Yes, we have to make characters to behave like a real person. Try to remember that the author is creating characters using language. So language does play a crucial role in order to create, create the characters. So language is, suppose if we do talk about the Macbeth, so witches are there, so they are talking, the language is used, that is riddling. So in Macbeth, the language was riddling by the witches. So we can say that, here we have an idea about the characters too. It means that characters, the three witches, are weird, and they are, making, these kinds of, decisions. They are making these kind of prophecies, which gonna be dangerous in near future. So it's showing about the characters of witches too. Next is, what are the characters like? How do you know this? So first of all, you have to, understand the types of characters, like the type of the characters. What do the characters say? Means their dialogues delivery is really important. What do the characters do? Like what kind of part they are playing in the text, or they are, a protagonist or antagonist or victim or something like that. Or how are they described, and how the writer described that character. In Inspector Calls, if we do talk about, so the Sybil Burling. Sybil Burling is described as cold. Why? Just because of her behavior to the Eva Smith. So she was described as cold by J.B. Priestley just because of her behavior. How are they seen by other characters too? Gerald was considered to be, Gerald in an Inspector Calls, he was considered to be the part of, upper class, and Arthur Burling, he was having kind of prejudice in his mind against the social class too, related to Edna. So Edna is the main representative. So we do have, after analyzing such kind of examples, we can understand how are they seen by other characters, or how they are described by the writers. So we have completed this point too. Now, characterization example. Characters can be shown through the easy characters do. So what they say, what they look like, and what they own. Suppose Arthur Burling. So if we do talk about Arthur Burling from an Inspector Calls, so it's, upper middle class. The term was the upper middle class just because of the, the luxuries he was having. Or Gerald, so the way Gerald was talking about, like about his, knighthood, about his family status in the society, about his croft business. So these all are things, are actually representatives, the real symbols of the characters in the play. So we can, have an idea about the characters by the dialogue delivery, about the possession they're having. And, so this point is clear to you. Next is, the following extracts describe two farmers from Bruce Chatwin's On the Black Hill. So now I'm going to represent you with an extract, and it's an extract, which describing two farmers from Bruce Chatwin's On the Black Hill. The extract, the text name is On the Black Hill. What do we learn about these characters from the writer's choice of language? So we have to first of all identify the writer's choice of language, and what do we analyze from this too. So now let's get started with the extract. The brothers were identical twins. As boys, only their mother could tell them apart. Now age and accidents had weathered them in different ways. Lewis was tall and stringy, with shoulders set square and a steady long-limbed stride. Even at 80, he could walk over the hills all day, or wield an axe all day, and not get tired. He gave off a strong smell. His eyes, grey, dreamy, and astigmatic, were set well back into the skull and capped with thick round lenses. See, there are multiple adjectives are over there. You have to identify the kind of techniques, and in wide metal frames. He bore the scar of cycling accident on his nose, and ever since its tip had curved downwards and turned purple in cold weather. His head would wobble as he spoke. Unless he was fumbling with his watch chain, he had no idea what to do with his hands. In company, he always wore a puzzled look, and if anyone made a statement of fact, he had say thank you or very kind of you. Everyone agreed he had a wonderful way with sheepdogs. So Benjamin was shorter, pinker, neater, and sharp-tongued. His chin fell into his neck, but he still possessed the full stretch of his nose, which he would use in conversation as a weapon. He had less hair. He did all the cooking, the darning and the ironing, and he kept the accounts. No one could be fiercer in a haggle. No one could be fiercer in a haggle over stock prices, and he would go on arguing for hours until the dealer threw up his hand and said, "Come off, you old skinflint," and he had smile and say, "Come on, you old skinflint," and he'd smile and say, "What can you mean by that?" So it's like that. On the Black Hill, Bruce Chatwin. So it's an extract from On the Black Hill, written by Bruce Chatwin. So you can have an idea about the detailed information about the characters. You can think about it. So Benjamin is very sharp and he is very talkative. You can conclude. Or if we do talk about Lewis, so he's very hardworking, he's very active, and he works all day long and on the hills. So this is showing that the stamina of Lewis. So these things, these small detailings of the characters are actually showing the great things about the story, about the text, about the character's nature. Now let's talk about analysis. So what we have analyzed after reading this kind of extract from On the Hill. So analysis. So let's get started with the analysis, whatever we have analyzed from the text. The writer uses language to contrast the two characters. Although they are twins, they are very different. Means being twins, they are still really different from each other. The first twin, Lewis, is presented as physically active with a steady long-limbed stride. The choice of words here suggests confidence, like he is very straight just because of his confidence on his body. The word stride has connotations of energy and vigor. Next analysis of this extract. In the contrast to this, his head would wobble as he spoke. The word wobble suggests an uncertainty in Lewis. This is reinforced by the choice of the verb fumbling in the same sentence. The examples of his limited dialogue, thank you, very kind of you, also reveal he is not quite comfortable with talking at social occasions. With the exclamation marks, adding a comical feel to his speech. It's like he is not, these kind of literary devices, these punctuation marks. So all these things are showing the multiple things about the characters. You have to catch all that things while writing your answers, and you have to point that things in your answer in order to attain good marks. In contrast, Benjamin is presented as a character who would go on arguing for hours. It's again showing the contrast between the two characters. Benjamin, he is a very talkative, but on the cases of Lewis, he is talkative, but he doesn't feel comfortable at the social occasion in case of conversation. The repetition of the after the sharp consonants, the repetition of the after the sharp consonants in shorter, pinker nature mirror the idea of Benjamin as more sharp-tongued. The image of the character using his nose as a weapon is also effective in establishing his sharper personality. The formal, deliberate tone of his dialogue, "What can you mean by that?" shows that he is more in control than his brother during social conversation. Again, this is a kind of a contrast we can see between the Lewis and the Benjamin. Benjamin, he is very confident about his talking skills, about his communication skills at the social occasions. But in contrast, Lewis, he's underconfident and he doesn't feel comfortable. It's more important to think about the characters change and interact with each other, how they do interact with each other, how they are, how much they're good enough in the communication. So as this could suggest some important themes or idea in the text, the writer may use language to encourage the reader to respond to a character in a certain way. Look for contrasts or contradictions, not just between the characters, but within each character. You have to find the contrast between each characters because, let me give you one example about an Inspector Calls. So Edna, forget about it. Let me give you an example about Inspector Calls. So first is Eva Smith and Sheila. Eva Smith is the representative of liberal class, like how the girls from liberal class got treated at that time. And Sheila was the one, she was very snobbish kind of girl, and she used to do what? She was, she used to get everything she wanted to have in her life. And she was a kind of, spoiled kid. So this is showing the contrast between the two characters. Or if we do talk about the contrast between the situation of Inspector Gould or Mr. Arthur Burling. Inspector Gould and Arthur Burling. So these two characters are having the contrast between them. So the writer may use language to encourage the reader to respond to a character in a certain way. Look for contrast and contradiction, not just between the characters, but between with each other. Like what kind of contrast in the qualities a character is possessing. You have to find the contrast even between the qualities. So suppose if we do talk about Lewis, so he was very sharp, he was very hardworking, he was very active, although he was not active in case of social occasions. In real life, no one is simply good or bad. All effective characters have more than one side, means one character can have multiple sides too. Now the typical contrast between the characters, character who think versus character who feel. So you have to show the contrast between the characters too. So here, the character who thinks versus character who feels. The kind of, again, the war between the heart and mind. What the character is thinking about and what the character is feeling about. Characters who talk versus character who act. Suppose if we do talk about Edna, so she was the one who she was just acting in the play. She was just serving the Burlings. But Arthur Burling and the other Burling family, Arthur Burling and the other members of the Burling family, they were indulged in a kind of a communication that was going wrong. Sociable character versus solitary characters means which, some characters who are very sociable and some characters who are very solitary. Means, let's do talk about Benjamin. He was very social, but Lewis, he was very solitary, kind of, he he preferred solitude over being social. Predators who take advantage of people versus characters who are victims. Again, the villain and the victims. Macbeth, so Macbeth, the one, he was the villain, itself got changed. And the victim probably was the Banquo or Lady Macduff or Macduff. So these things are showing that who is the victim and who is the villain in the text. Characters who want one thing versus who want another. It's all about the possession, the kind of ambition, like what kind of ambition, what kind of ambitious nature the characters are having. You have to point that things too. Typical contrasts with the character. A person who says one thing and does another. A character who sacrifices something important to pursue a goal for their own. A character who wants two opposing things. So now we have to talk about the characters and the contrast. For that, let me again, present you with one kind of an extract so that you can have an idea about it. So this extract is a description of a character from Hilary Mantel's historical novel, Bring Up the Bodies. Thomas Cromwell is the king's secretary, an important role. What do we learn about Thomas Cromwell from this extract? So you have to read this extract, you have to analyze it in your own way, and then you have to find the contrast between the characters themselves. Thomas Cromwell is now about 50 years old. He has a liberal body, stocky, useful, running to fat. He has black hair graying now, and because of his pale, impermeable skin, which seems designed to resist rain as well as sun. People see that his father was, Irishman, though really he was a brewer and blacksmith at Pitney. A shearsman too, a man with a finger in every pie. A scalper and brawler, a drunk and a bully man, a man often hauled before the justice for the punching someone for cheating someone. Thomas Cromwell. So now let me present you with kind of an extract. This here. Thomas Cromwell is now about 50 years old. He has a liberal body, stocky, useful, running to fat. He has black hair, graying now, and because of his pale, impermeable skin, which seems designed to resist rain as well as sun. So you can read this extract by your own later. You can pause the video and you can, read this extract. And similarly with this, how the son of such man has achieved him present eminence in a question all Europe asks. So, you can read this whole extract till here, and then we can discuss about it too. Now, this time to think, this time to analyze about the extract. There is a contrast between Cromwell's background as the son of blacksmith and his current job and position. The very first thing we do analyze, the contrast between the background, his background and his current position. The contrast between the past and the present. The use of different tenses stresses this by placing the word now in the middle of the first sentence. Then the rest of the extract focuses mainly on his past. The writer focuses on Cromwell's varied background by listing his various professions or occupations. First, his father's various traders as listed, a brewer and blacksmith, a shearsman too. Later in the extract, Cromwell's occupation are listed, a hired soldier, a wool trader, a banker. The effect of this listing seems to be linked to the two men, one who was a brawler, a drunk, and a bully, and one who is surrounded by mystery. The opening phrases from some of the sentences are repeated. Some say, others say. The effect of this repetition is to suggest there is a mystery about how Cromwell got to where he is, that people gossip about him, People don't seem to like him. Either he came up with the family of the queen, or maybe he owes his rise to sorcerers. So it's like that. So we have to understand these things. We need to learn about the analysis of the extract itself. The reader could feel sympathy for Cromwell. He is a self-made man. He worked hard. He did multiple jobs. Who is sometimes looked down on by those around him. There is also suggestion that this character does not need a reader's sympathy. Means he is a self-made man, so he doesn't need any kind of sympathy. His physical appearance also suggests a certain toughness. He is stocky and his skin is described as impermeable. The use of this last adjective could also present his character. He is close and gives nothing away. Means he is very tough, he's rough and tough, and he is very self-made, and he doesn't need any kind of sympathy. So it's just like that. So we have, discovered the all multiple aspects of the character and the contracts and the characterization and the narrative voice, how they are so important, how understanding the voice of narrator is really important, and how to understand, like, how it's important to contrasting between the two situations, between the two characters, or about the or contrasting between the two qualities of a character himself. So I hope this video gonna help you. This is all from my side. So we're gonna meet in the next lecture. Thank you so much for joining Glecta.